The story of The Double Game is a thrilling tale of suspense, mystery, and unexpected twists. It follows the story of a young journalist, Sarah, who finds herself in the middle of a dangerous game of cat and mouse with a masked figure who is stalking her through the dark streets of Millfield. As she tries to uncover the truth behind the figure's identity, she discovers a web of deceit and betrayal that leads her down a path she never thought she would have to travel. With each passing moment, the danger increases, and Sarah must fight to stay alive, all while trying to clear the name of the very person who is after her.
It was a quiet and chilly evening in the small town of Millfield. The streets were deserted, except for the occasional cars driving by. Sarah, a young journalist, was walking back to her apartment after a long day at work when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around to see a dark figure lurking in the shadows. As she quickened her pace, the figure started to follow her, their footsteps getting louder and closer. Her heart raced as she realized she was being followed. She turned around to confront the figure, but they had disappeared. Suddenly, Sarah's phone rang. It was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the best of her. A chilling voice on the other end said, "I've been watching you, Sarah. You're going to wish you never crossed me." Sarah's heart raced as she realized she was in danger. She tried to call for help, but her phone had no signal. She was on her own with nowhere to go. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to think of a way out of this situation. She quickly scanned her surroundings, looking for any signs of help. But the streets were empty, and no one was around to hear her scream. As she turned a corner, Sarah heard a loud noise behind her. She quickly turned around, only to see the figure from before standing right in front of her. This time, she could make out more details. He was tall and muscular, with a black mask covering his face. He wore all black, making him almost invisible in the dark. Sarah's heart pounded as she tried to run, but the figure was too fast. He caught up to her quickly and grabbed her by the arm. She struggled to break free, but his grip was too strong. He dragged her into an alleyway and pushed her against the wall. As he leaned in closer, Sarah could feel his hot breath on her face. She closed her eyes, ready for the worst. But to her surprise, he just whispered, "I need your help." Sarah was confused and scared. She didn't know what to do. The figure let go of her arm, and she stepped back, trying to keep some distance between them. She looked at him, still unable to see his face, and asked, "What do you want from me?" The figure took a deep breath before speaking. "I'm being framed for a crime I didn't commit. Someone is trying to ruin my life, and I need your help to clear my name." Sarah was skeptical. She didn't know if she could trust this person, but something in his voice made her feel like he was telling the truth. She decided to hear him out. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "I need you to find the real culprit," he replied. "I can't do it on my own. I need someone good at digging up information, and that's where you come in." Sarah was hesitant but knew she couldn't just walk away from this. She agreed to help the figure, and they shook hands, sealing the deal. But little did she know this decision would change her life forever. Over the next few days, Sarah worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. She dug through public records, interviewed witnesses, and followed every lead. The more she learned, the more convinced she became that the figure was innocent. But as she got closer to the truth, Sarah started to feel like someone was watching her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. Every time she turned around, she thought she saw a glimpse of a black mask or heard the sound of footsteps behind her. Despite her growing paranoia, Sarah was determined to get to the bottom of the case. She worked long hours and barely slept, driven by a sense of justice and a desire to help the figure who had come to her for help. Finally, after days of hard work, Sarah found the evidence she needed to clear the figure's name. She rushed to his apartment to share the good news, but she found something that made her blood run cold when she got there. As Sarah entered the apartment, she found the figure lying on the ground, motionless. His mask had been removed, and his face was now visible. It was someone she knew, her ex-boyfriend, David. Sarah was in shock. She couldn't believe that the person she had been helping all this time was her ex-boyfriend. She knelt to check his pulse, but it was too late. He was already dead. Sarah felt like the ground beneath her feet had disappeared. She had been played. David had manipulated her into helping him, and she had fallen into his trap. Just then, Sarah heard a noise coming from the other room. She cautiously walked towards the source of the sound, only to find a note lying on the table. It read, "I knew you wouldn't be able to resist the chance to clear my name. You've been played, Sarah. And now, you're going to pay the price." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She knew she had to get out of there and fast. But as she tried to leave, she found that the door was locked from the outside. She was trapped. Sarah's heart raced as she realized she was locked in the apartment with a dead body and a killer on the loose. She frantically searched the room for anything to help her escape, but everything seemed locked or too heavy to move. Just then, she heard a noise coming from the window. She turned around to see a masked figure trying to break in. Sarah's heart pounded as she tried to find a place to hide. She saw a closet and quickly ran towards it, hoping to hide inside. But as she opened the door, she realized it was already occupied. There was a body inside, covered in a white sheet. Sarah gasped in horror. She had stumbled upon another victim of the killer. She knew she had to act fast if she wanted to survive. She grabbed the sheet and wrapped it around herself, hoping to blend in and escape unnoticed. She tiptoed towards the door and listened for any signs of the killer. Just then, she heard the sound of footsteps coming closer. She held her breath, waiting for the figure to pass by. But as he entered the room, he stopped in front of the closet. Sarah's heart raced as she waited for the worst. The figure slowly opened the closet door, revealing Sarah standing there wrapped in the white sheet. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the worst. But to her surprise, the figure just laughed. "Nice try, Sarah. But you're not getting away that easily." The figure removed his mask, and Sarah saw his face for the first time. It was her boss, the editor-in-chief of the newspaper she worked for. Sarah was shocked. She couldn't believe the person she trusted and looked up to was a killer. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you do this?" Her boss just smiled. "It was all about power, Sarah. I wanted to control everything and everyone around me. And you were just a pawn in my game." Sarah's mind raced as she tried to think of a way out of this situation. She knew she had to keep her wits about her if she wanted to survive. Just then, she heard a loud noise coming from outside. It sounded like the police had arrived. She saw her chance and ran for it, hoping to escape before her boss could catch her. Sarah ran as fast as she could, her heart pounding. She could hear her boss chasing after her, his footsteps getting louder and closer. But she didn't stop. She knew she had to keep moving if she wanted to survive. Exiting the apartment building, she saw a police car parked outside. She rushed towards it, hoping to get help. The police officers saw her and quickly got out of the car. Sarah told them everything that had happened, from her ex-boyfriend's death to her boss's confession. The police officers listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. Suddenly, they heard a noise coming from the apartment building. It sounded like someone was trying to escape. The police officers rushed inside, guns drawn, ready to apprehend the killer. But when they got there, they found that the apartment was empty. The killer was gone. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that her boss was still out there, somewhere. And she didn't know when or where he would strike next. The police searched the area for Sarah's boss, but he seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Sarah knew she couldn't let her guard down. She didn't know when he would strike again and had to be ready. Over the next few days, Sarah's life changed drastically. She went from being a journalist to a witness in a murder case. She had to testify in court, reliving the horrors of that night over and over again. Despite the trauma, Sarah felt a sense of relief. Her boss had been caught and brought to justice. She knew she could finally start to move on with her life. But as she walked back to her apartment, she felt a chill run down her spine. She saw a dark figure lurking in the shadows, watching her every move. She knew that her nightmare wasn't over yet. Sarah's heart raced as she tried to identify the figure in the shadows. But before she could get a good look, the figure disappeared. Sarah tried to shake off the feeling of being watched and continued walking towards her apartment. But as she approached the door, she realized it had been slightly ajar. She cautiously pushed the door open, ready for anything. But to her surprise, there was no one inside. Everything seemed to be just as she had left it. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that maybe she was just being paranoid. She walked towards the living room to turn on the lights, but she heard a loud noise behind her as she flicked the switch. She turned to see a masked figure standing right before her. Her heart raced as she tried to think of a way out. But then, the figure removed his mask, revealing a familiar face. It was her ex-boyfriend, David. Sarah couldn't believe it. She thought he was dead. But as he spoke, she realized the truth. "I faked my death to catch the killer," he said. "I knew my life was in danger, so I had to disappear. But I couldn't do it alone. That's where you came in." Sarah felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had been played, but it was for a good cause this time. She smiled, feeling grateful for the unexpected twist of fate. As she hugged David, Sarah knew her life would never be the same again. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was finally free.